Hello, welcome to the People Profit Podcast, the show where we flip the script on traditional business thinking and prove that when you put people first, profits follow. I'm Sandra Coker, your guide on this journey to more engaged teams, loyal customers, and a healthier bottom line. These episodes are brought to you by Human Power Solutions, helping organizations unlock the human potential that powers performance. Whether you're a leader, an HR pro, or a curious change maker, buckle up. We're diving into fresh stories, real-world strategies, and a few laughs along the way. Ready to turn your workplace into a profit-powered people machine? Let's get started. And today, I am thrilled to have Lindsey Campbell Brittain, founder and CEO of Turas Consulting and Coaching. She's joining us today from New Zealand, which is exciting. Lindsey brings over 26 years of dynamic leadership experience in marketing, communications, and change management, guiding organizations through resilience, transformation, and human-centered leadership. In this episode, Lindsey will share insights on why resilience is a superpower, the ripple effect of impactful leadership, and how emotional intelligence shapes our leadership journeys. Let's dive in. Welcome, Lindsey. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to see you. Thanks for inviting me to be with you today.
I'm so excited to see you. I missed you at our last gathering, hoping to see you in October. But Lindsey, your story is really amazing, and you and I just clicked immediately when we met last February. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story and kind of, where you came from and where you are today.
Cool. So I'm a proud Scot who lives in New Zealand. And I suppose my journey's had many twists and turns actually that spanned the whole globe. And really for me, leadership wasn't really something I thought about early on in my career. And I sort of became an identity-led leader without really realizing it before I got a title, before it sort of arrived. And I've learned the hard way, maybe through heartbreak and loss and determination, my journey, that what identity-led leadership is really about. And that's about how you show up. It's less about the titles, it's less about the grandiose gestures, and it's really about how you present yourself in line with what you believe and what you value. And that really comes to bear in the really hard moments in life when you really have to dig deep, when something and a curveball comes in. And I've probably faced three major pivot moments in my life, in my journey, if you like.
Yeah.
And that's where I've really had to look at who I am as a person to help me get through those. The first one was I was a really ambitious marketer in London. And then all of a sudden, in a moment, I was a full-time carer looking after my husband who had a brain tumor on the other side of the world in New Zealand. And so at that moment, my whole sort of identity and path completely changed. And then I lost him when I was 29. And that was a huge moment in my life, and definitely where resilience and leadership came to bear, but not just leadership from myself, leadership, extraordinary leadership from everyone who was around me, my family, my friends. And that extraordinary leadership was happening in the quiet moments. It wasn't in the big gestures. It was the compassion, the courage, the commitment that they showed to help me decide who I needed to be after that event. And so that was the first sort of big pivot that changed who I was.
Yeah.
And then the second one was deciding who I was going to be after that event, after I lost my husband. And I decided to be, as you've said, to be a change agent in marketing communications. My passion was really to help marketing communication teams be the best that they could be and unlock the extraordinary leadership version of themselves. And that didn't always come with a welcome banner. Can I just say? It came with, it didn't. And that was all about the perception of who we were, our identity as a marketing communications team and what we brought. And so I navigated multiple restructures. I navigated high impact changes in operating models, in team makeup, etc. But I also navigated redundancies where I was personally impacted and professional bullying and burnout. So I've lived all the hard aspects of where you need resilience. And again, that got me to a point where I thought, actually, I'm not sure if I'm really living in line with my own values anymore. I got a bit lost along the way. And then I suppose the third big pivot, I was medically injured in a operation in 2016, which left me chronically injured. And Sandra, you know my story here, but I am basically bionic from the waist down.
Yeah.
I've had a spinal fusion and 4 hip replacement as a result, and my life went from being a fitness fanatic to not being able to live my life in the same way. And so again, having to relook at who I was as a person to live my life to the fullest. And so, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So many different iterations, right? You're one person, then something life-changing happens. And then you think, okay, that's my life-changing moment. And then something else and something else. And, one of your mantras is resilience is built, not born.
That's right. Absolutely.
And, after the death of your husband, which I'm sorry about that, that's a big moment for you. And was there a time that you were just like, the injury, the medical injury, did you feel like, okay, I just can't be resilient anymore?
Oh, yes. There was many, many times of anger, tears. I questioned, had I done something wrong in my previous life that I would be deserving of all of this? But actually, what I've learned from that is that I think you get tested when some other force or something knows you can do it. And I really do believe that. And I now use the learnings from all of that time to help others navigate really big moments in their lives and leadership. It's been a gift. And I know you wouldn't think that. I definitely didn't think it at the time when I was cross and I was angry. And I think what I would say about that is you have to recognize those feelings as well. Don't, when some people say, oh, don't worry, you'll get over it. It's almost dismissing the emotion that you feel. You have to actually sit in the emotion first and then realize not to linger in it, because lingering in the emotion is sort of wasted time. You have to work out, what am I going to do next?
Right.
What's the next step? And the way I sort of took back control, because it is a feeling of loss of control, is to come up with a plan of what you're going to do next and who you need to help you get there.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. That circle of people, you've surrounded yourself with really good people. We were talking prior to the recording about your centers of influence and how how they've just helped you to grow. And we're going to talk a little bit more about your current business and what you're doing. But kind of going back to this notion of leadership being resilient, and what are some of the daily habits that leaders can adopt to proactively build resilience? We have a lot of young leaders here that are listening to our podcast, people that are just stepping into these roles. And it's not easy. Being a leader is not easy. So what are some of the things that they can do to, build that resiliency in themselves and their teams?
I think when people, I think the first thing I would say is identity alignment, which sounds very highfalutin, but it's not. What I mean by that is everyone has an identity. You as a leader, your team, the organization you work for, the business that you're in, you all have an identity. And that identity is shaped by 5 things: the values you hold, the beliefs that you hold, the habits that you do every day. It's what you do every day to live your values, the behaviors, which are kind of your responses to an external stimuli that's in line with values, and the environment you create, which is either going to nurture your values or it's going to jar with your values.
Right.
And so the first thing I would say is get yourselves aligned around your identity. So if you're the leader of that team, think about who you are as a person and how you want to lead. And how does that align with the identity of your team and what they need? and the identity and values of the organization and where they want to go. And if you get all of those aligned, then you share them, then already you've got a grounded foundation that is stronger than if you try to do it all on your own. And when you take over the leadership of a new team, that's not necessarily articulated. People don't spend time doing that. And what I've found in my experience is that results in noise, distraction, overcomplication, over-explaining, lack of focus in the wrong area. So I think that would be the first thing that I would advise people to do. And then the second thing that I'd advise them to do is treat your resilience like a muscle. It's something where you need to do reps every day, like you're in the gym.
Yeah.
And those come from your habits. So what are the habits that would help strengthen your leadership and your cohesion as a team? And that can be the time you spend together, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Make your identity part of an ongoing discussion. And I think resilience is your edge. It's about how, when something comes in and it's not going to plan, that's when resilience kicks in. And that's when you can pivot in line with not panicking and with confidence, because you're grounded in who you are as a team and what you believe in. You are more focused because you've not gone into survival mode. You know what it's like when you're in an organization and something comes left field and you suddenly go into survival mode.
Yes.
And your head becomes foggy.
Yep.
Noise starts, and you suddenly rush from the information you've just received into some kind of action. You think you have to take action immediately. My advice would be pause for a moment. Pause and just take stock of the information that's come in and who you are as a leader and what you value, and then make some decisions. Don't rush forward into the action, because often that might not be aligned with what you would normally do when you're not in survival mode. It makes you think more creatively about what you might do.
I love the line, resilience is the edge. It's your edge. It's having that skill and building that muscle every single day. Love that. And you're right in terms of, taking a beat. I say take a beat, right? Don't jump into that immediate decision or that immediate problem, that you're going to solve, or an employee that's unhappy or a client that's unhappy. We scramble to make sure that everything is, we want to just react. But taking that minute to think about those things is really, really important. I love that.
Yeah, and it is. And resilience doesn't operate on its own. It doesn't operate in a vacuum. I've learned with 26 years of a few scars along the way, I'd just like to add, there's kind of 3 pillars of lasting transformation. The first one is space, and that's about the pause. Give yourself permission to pause, even when everything's going crazy around you, to sort of take stock and reconnect back into who you are and what you believe, and ground yourself in that. That gives you some calm and some clarity, and it takes the fog away. And then from that clarity, space gives you that clarity. From that clarity, you get more confident in who you are and in your power of your decision making.
Yeah.
And then from that power, that creates more power in your voice, your decision, your values, and the next step that you're going to take. So it's more intentional. It's not just a gut reaction. It's actually considered.
Yep.
And then from that power creates the momentum, and then resilience maintains the momentum. So you need all 3 to really create lasting transformation. Otherwise, to be honest, you don't thrive. You just stay in survival mode for the whole time you're in that leadership position.
That stagnant, that just the ugliness of just being good enough, right? I think about companies that are restructuring, they're growing by acquisition, they're adding all these different people, and you've led teams through significant restructuring. And can you tell us, how decisions have this ripple effect throughout the company? Because I think a lot of times, many times, our companies are living in silos, our departments are living in silos, and this change looks good. And then 2 departments down, they're like, what? You just screwed up our entire system. So can you talk a little bit about, the decision making and why you do need to take that pause because of the ripple effect?
Because it's what I would call enterprise-wide leadership. And that's actually when you move from being a functional manager to being a leader, in my opinion. It's when you think about the role of your team and the decisions that you made and how it will connect with other parts of the organization to make greater impact. Or it might distract from that impact, or it might create chaos for them. And so if you think about, and I hate this expression, cog in a wheel, but in essence, an organization is a number of cogs. And if they're not interlinked and one is off the reservation making its own decisions and cogging along in its own little way, then it's not actually thinking about the organization as a whole entity, a whole identity. It's thinking of itself as an identity. And when you do that and don't connect it into the other parts, then you make decisions in a vacuum. And I've experienced that so many times. I can tell you so many examples where I've been in I've received a consultation document, and that consultation document has demonstrated to me that decisions have been made at the top around operating models and culture that are not connecting marketing communications, for example, into the business. And they're keeping them out as a support system. So already the identity they thought that marketing and communications hold is it's not a must-have, it's a support system. But in fact, as we know, successful organizations need to integrate brand marketing communications into their business strategy for maximum impact. And so already you can see a decision has been made around identity that already is taking us as the cog out of the system, and it won't make us as effective. And so you need to think about how, when you're making decisions, the importance of co-design, the importance of co-creation with your stakeholders right from the beginning. It's absolutely critical because they have a perspective that you won't have. It brings a richness of perspective. And the thing for me, I have this saying where I say perspective plus proximity plus purpose equals leadership, presence, and impact. And that's about perspective as a whole organization. It's about proximity to each of your partners and stakeholders. It's about alignment on what you're there to do and the decisions you're making that will be purposeful, and that will give you the impact that you desire.
So when you think about value alignment, it's very critical for effective leadership, right? Are there any tricks or any pointers you can give to our listeners? Like, how do they recognize when things are misaligned? What are some of those clues that people can look for?
They'll feel it. They might not know what it is, but they'll feel it. So because if you think about your values and your beliefs, they're like your inner GPS.
Yeah.
They are what you feel fiercely about, even if you're not conscious about it. And what happens is that those values get set into your conditioning, okay? Just to go into the neuroscience for a minute. So 5% of your brain is conscious and 95% of your brain is unconscious.
Gotcha.
So 5% of your brain is the doing part, and the 95% is the being, and that's where all your beliefs sit. So if you're walking around and you're just in habitual mode in your conscience, then you can't make lasting change without going into your unconscious, which is where your beliefs and your values lie, because you need to reframe those to make change and bring them into your conscious. So it's actually it's when something's out of kilter with your values, you will feel frustrated, angry, icky. I've had people who say to me, I just don't feel like I fit in this organization, Lindsey. What am I doing wrong? And it's often the default where we go, what am I doing wrong, Lindsey? Or am I not performing well? And actually, when you go through an exercise where you look at the heart of the values you hold as an individual or as a leader and the values of your organization, what many of my clients find with utter relief is that they're just not the same.
Yeah.
And because it's like a square peg in a round hole, And so with relief, they realize it's not necessarily about something that's wrong on either party. It's just they don't fit. And they've been wondering why they feel a bit stuck or lost in there, not getting traction. You'll have an emotional response to it, but you might not realize that it's because what you believe in and what you value is not the same as the organization that you work for.
Running a business is hard. Developing your people shouldn't be. At Human Power Solutions, we act as your outsourced chief learning officer, designing custom learning and development experiences that actually move the needle. No fluff, no cookie-cutter workshops, just results. Whether your people need better communication, stronger leadership, or less burnout, we provide strategic solutions that align with your goals and keep your team moving forward. Visit hpowersolutions.com and unlock your team's full potential without disrupting operations.
It's so interesting that, your gut kind of, when something's not going well. And it's so hard as a leader to make decisions around that. Because a lot of times other people in the company don't understand why you make a decision. And sometimes it's just the gut that says, no, something's not quite right here. And I think you're right. Not being able to take a step forward, or things aren't moving along the way that you need them to be. So, when you think about these situations, what steps should leaders take if they recognize their values are misaligned with the organization's culture or with their team? Like, are there different steps that people can take?
Yes, I've run teams through workshops. I had a team a year ago that had just gone through big change, and to give due credit to their leader, he recognized that they were all a bit out at sea.
Mm-hmm.
And is how I would describe it. You know what I mean? And were we the like? And it was, and that feeling is never nice, whether you're the leader of the team or the member of the team.
Yeah.
And the way that was showing up was there was a lack of collaboration. People were unclear about their last role and what role they were operating in the new structure. So people were stepping into other people's roles. It was creating tension. There was an emotional response to that change. They didn't understand it. And so there was a whole fog around that change. And so what I did was I got them all in a room, and we actually we started with some of the logical stuff, which was, what does organizational alignment look like? But then we moved very quickly into what does success look like? What are the values that you hold as a team? Because often what you find is when you ask a question like that, which is not personal to one person, it's not directed at one person, it's an idea, you bring an independence to the conversation. It doesn't feel personal. Right. And I run exercises where I give a team a set of cards. It's called the emotional culture deck, which I really, really think is a great deck. And you get the team to choose what they define success as in line with values. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's their starting point. And through that exercise, what they realize is that they actually share the same values. They have a common foundation that they hadn't realized before because they hadn't thought about it that way.
Right.
And so that starts bringing them in from being out at sea to suddenly realizing actually we have something more in common. And when that happens, some of the barriers come down. Because when you're out at sea, the barriers go up, don't they? They're your protective armor.
Yeah.
And when you're emotional about something. And so it's about how do you bring down those barriers safely?
Yeah.
In a way that people feel they can talk about it. And that exercise is a great way to start with who they are as a team and not go into the roles and responsibilities and why we did the change. And because those are logical things.
Right.
And often people are out to sea because they were emotional about something.
Yeah. I mean, change is emotional. It's, there's process, but if people don't understand why, or if there's a lot of change happening all at once and people are just like, we need to catch our breath, it's really difficult for people. And that's where the defensive barriers of the wall, goes up. And,
And
when you're good. Yeah.
So I was going to say, and if there's, it changes the journey and you should view it as such. You should always, in my opinion, when you're going through change and you're leading your team through change, you need to be there for them and have their back. But you need to also be real about it. And if there's hard decisions to be made, you bring them on the journey around that hard decision, and you're empathetic about it. You're human about it.
Yeah.
But you're honest about it. And if you don't know the answer to something, you're honest about it and you commit to going and getting the answer. So you keep them in the discussion. That, I think, is the secret. The days of the secret squirrels and closed doors of change are no longer the heart of leadership. It needs to be human when you're going through change, because it is people's lives, because leadership and life are interchangeable. They don't sit in compartments.
Right. And when you think about awareness and things like that, you think about EQ, emotional intelligence, and how important that is in the workplace. You talk a lot about that. And, even leaders who don't have formal titles, which, you lead yourself through an organization, and, you don't necessarily have to lead a team to be effective. So, what kind of practical advice would you give for anyone that's looking to get into a leadership role, then in a leadership role, to help develop that emotional intelligence? Because I hear, it's you can't learn emotional intelligence. And, I'm like, yeah, you actually can. So it's a skill like anything else.
It absolutely is.
Advice would you give?
It is, again, it's like all of these things I'm talking about. They're muscles.
Yeah.
They are muscles. People who say to me, I can't be a strategic thinker. It's a muscle.
Yeah.
And if you practice it often enough, it becomes a habit.
Right.
And so the first thing I would say about that is, in order to be emotionally intelligent, you need to be emotionally intelligent about yourself first.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't understand yourself and what you're about and your identity and who you are and what drives you, and where there might be gaps in your identity, you can't do it for others.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have this tool, which is it's kind of like an identity map. It's like your wiring. It shows how your values connect to your beliefs, and then it shows, well, what habits do I need to build to live my values and my beliefs, and what behaviors do I need to build, and what environment do I want to be in. And so that is how you become emotionally intelligent, because you start to see who you are and where some of the gaps are. And the reason I'm saying that is because beliefs are emotional. Limiting beliefs are emotional. They're not logical.
Yeah.
And so in order to grow into a leadership role, you'll have some limiting beliefs. We all have them, right? Imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. All the inner stories we tell ourselves are emotionally driven. And they could be from our past. They could be from an event in our life. And so you need to get canny, as my mum would say. Get canny with your own emotional side of yourself in terms of your own beliefs and inner stories. Because by reframing them with yourself, you'll learn to reframe it with others.
Yeah.
And if you can't do that, then that makes it more challenging. Imagine you and I, Sandra, just met, and I didn't know anything about values and beliefs and anything about myself. I think it would be pretty hard for me to connect into talking to you about, what you were struggling with emotionally, or your beliefs that were holding you back, if I hadn't gone through the process myself. It's a tool.
Yeah. I love that. And if you think about it, I love stories. So I would love to hear a story where you've seen someone that built that emotional intelligence muscle, right, shift the dynamics of a leadership team. And I asked this question because I was actually in a facilitation today, and I was asked, the team I was working with get along really well. And they were like, how do you, they were asking me, they're like, how do you handle teams that don't like each other? And to me, I'm like, that's a blast, because it's just usually some sort of a barrier that they don't know what they don't know. Do you have any stories?
Yes, I do. And often I'll bust a myth, which I've often got faced with, which is people will say to me, emotional intelligence is for women, not men. And that, I face that stereotype all the time. And, it's definitely for women, men can't be emotionally intelligent. And that's just not true. And this particular example is a male leader that I work with. And he is more introverted. He's not like me. I'm obviously clearly not an introvert. And the heart of the issue was that he hadn't connected emotionally with his team. He'd come in a big change. He was an introvert. He was male, they were female, and just over time, the lack of maybe openness and communication, because they were younger, less mature in their leadership. He was older, more mature in his leadership. He was making assumptions around what they were thinking. They were making assumptions around what he was doing in his decision making. And it just was, and so through mentoring him and through mentoring them individually, they have learned to understand each other and what drives them. And he has changed that team dramatically in a year. I've just been careful about what I say here for confidentiality reasons, obviously. But that team has gone from being an emotionally driven, in survival mode team that would not want to spend much time together in the same room,
Right.
to being a human leadership driven team. So he understands a lot more about them. He communicates a lot more in terms of the decisions and what he's thinking, because he knows that it's really important to them for their own emotional stability. He gets them together more often as a team, because he realizes that team culture, he could operate on his own fine, not worry about it.
Right.
But he realizes that for the stability and the identity of the team, they need more time together. And that time is not just logically spent, it's spent on some of the emotional topics of the team around how they are and what's maybe holding them back in terms of their purpose and what they're trying to achieve together, or what they're not clear on. And so they have actually become quite a tight-knit team. It's actually wonderful to watch.
Yeah.
My journey with them started with, honestly, anger, distance, tears, resentment.
And why do you want to go to work every day like that?
Yeah, it was like there was a white space, big white space between them.
Yeah.
And that has, through emotional intelligence and communication and identity work, gone like that.
Yeah.
And
I think you think about psychological safety, right? So you think about so many employees don't have that space. And as we're going through really rapid changes, globalization, AI, so many things going on, and all the mental health issues. I mean, you name it. We've got a lot going on right now. How do you? That's a great story of just that investment of time in people versus the processes and the profits and all of that, which are all very important. But how do leaders get them to start thinking about creating that psychological safe environment as things are rapidly changing so much?
And the point you just made, Sandra, is so important. I don't want people to think that investment in strategic thinking or the technical side of your role is not important. Of course, it complements that. But I think organizations focus too much on the doing and less on the being.
Yeah.
And we're taught to influence and delegate and manage, but we're not necessarily told how to be as a leader or how our teams need to be. Yeah. And I think that is increasingly important in an ever-changing environment, because if you're anchored in what you do and the priorities are changing every day, then you're like a weed in a stream like this.
Yeah.
If you're anchored in who you are and what you want to be, then that's solid. And so the swirl can go on around you. And so I would really encourage leaders to invest that time in that anchor.
Yeah.
Because that will ground you when the swirl happens. And it will allow you to be calm and confident as a leader, which means less noise and burnout for you, less confusion for your team.
Yeah.
I've been through the burnout cycle multiple times, and it's not a great place to be either. Because it bleeds into home, it bleeds into everything.
It
And
does.
so my advice would be invest in that time. It is a worthwhile investment in the long run because it gives you and the people that you lead that anchor when they really need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And you and I both aren't saying have more meetings. That's not what
No.
we're saying, right? I mean, I think people are so meetinged out, but have more meaningful encounters, right? When you're getting together with your team and having that authentic communication with your teams. And, I think that can be really difficult when people are under high pressure or times of uncertainty in the world. What would you say to people that are like, I can't maintain this communication because I'm feeling too heavy.
Space. I do it myself as a business owner myself. I still get overwhelmed. I'm still human. And people do come to me, and they've shut themselves off. They've shrunk, Sandra. They've really shrunk into themselves, and it's either through burnout, bullying, they've lost their way, they're stuck in their career or their leadership journey, and the default response is logic. So when people are emotionally under pressure and overwhelmed, they will default to logic, not emotional response, because they just can't cope with looking at the emotional side. And the way to help with that is to create some space for them. And what I mean by that is space to just step back. So I actually coach virtually, but I also coach in my home. And loads of people have said to me, why don't you have an office in town? And I'm like, because actually people love coming to my home because it's a safe space where they can be to take some space to decide how to actually articulate what's happening inside of them. And sometimes it takes some questions to just peel back some of the logic, but it's in a very gentle way. I don't go, full in with really deep questions. I peel it back in a safe environment to the point where they can finally get to that layer when the breakthrough happens. And that normally comes with tears, I'll be honest. And they're very healthy and cathartic tears. And from those tears comes a strength and a clarity that reinvigorates them. And it's the most satisfying and fulfilling thing to do for someone else. I can't even describe to you. You'll know what I mean, Sandra.
I do.
It's a gift, and to be able to be part of helping someone break through that freeze or get out of that terrible tight box or space to think differently and think more calmly without just reacting to everything that's being thrown at them is really satisfying. Yeah.
So I love this conversation so much. Can you tell us a little bit more about your company, the North, what is
True
it?
North.
Yeah, the True North. Talk a little bit about, what you do, what True North means, what impacts you have on people. I just think our audience needs to know who Lindsey is.
Well, Turas actually means journey in Scottish Gaelic.
Okay.
And it was really important to me to reflect my own ancestry. But also it was really important to reflect that life and leadership is a journey, and it's all connected. Turas is where life and leadership meet, in all honesty.
Yeah.
And we are all about, or our philosophy is about who you are is how you lead. That is your true north. Here's the thing about True North. The true north is not the same as magnetic north. True north is 28 degrees off of magnetic north. And the reason that I love that metaphor, and I've developed the true north identity system for Turas, is because your true north, or what you want to do, your life, your journey, should not be influenced by external factors. It should be how you define yourself and what you want to achieve. So I came up with the idea of true north. And true north is when you ground yourself in who you are, and it guides you towards who you want to be and how you want to live your life. Because from my story, as you've gathered, Sandra, life can pivot in a moment. So you have to live it to the fullest while you're here, and live your legacy now. Don't wait. Don't wait to build the legacy you want to leave. You live it now while you're here. And that's the essence of what I do. So I set up Turas to help marketing communication professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs, and senior leaders to navigate those pivotal moments, whether it's through growth, burnout, reinvention, and to do it by reconnecting with themselves so they can move forward with clarity and courage and momentum. And it lasts because it's anchored in your identity. So it's not a surface quick fix.
Right.
It's actually going down into the heart of who you are to ground you so that all your future decisions and actions are anchored in that. And so I help people make decisions around their career choices by setting it in their values, or their leadership journey. I have clients who come to me from one career, and they leave with me in a completely different career that's anchored in their values, or they're going to start a business. I've had market communications people who are now going into corporate governance. I have a data analyst who's now set up her own business and it's launching this year. And because I'm a business mentor as well, I've taken her through the whole journey. I've walked alongside her the whole journey. And that's why I call Turas that, because I treat people in the whole person, and I can be with them from the beginning when they start with me in their identity. Then we go, what's your career and leadership choices? I can help with that based on your identity. And, you're going to go into a business. I can mentor you through the creation of your business identity and your value proposition and who you want to be and how you want to scale that business in line with your identity. So it's a whole journey, hence Turas, but it's all the idea of who you are.
I love it. I want to say thank you so much, Lindsey, for sharing your powerful insights on resilience, authenticity, emotional intelligence, and all the things that we've talked about. Your stories remind us that true leadership deeply impacts not just the workplace, but every aspect of our lives. And I think you're right when you said, leadership isn't just about the workplace. It also affects whatever is going on at home. And I think that's such a key thing. So for everyone listening, remember, leadership isn't just about a title. It's about influencing lives and leaving a legacy. So Lindsey, how can people connect with you? We're going to put it up on the screen, and obviously we're going to put links in our description, but how would they connect with you?
They would normally come into a complimentary clarity call with me. I like to speak to people and understand and explore with them where they're really at. And then I can work out which true north identity system it is that we would work within, whether it's for their life and leadership, if it's for their organization as a leader, for their business, or for resilience. And so I offer that because I think people like to hear a bit more about who I am, and it's all about the connection. So the best way is to go to my website and book that call when it suits them. And I'll ask them a few questions in a form beforehand, which will help me understand a lot more about them so we get the best value out of that. But it's really about the relationship and understanding whether we're a good fit and how I can help. So that is the best way that people can come and talk to me. I would suggest.
I love that. So, and also they can find you on LinkedIn.
They can find me everywhere. I'm everywhere. I'm omnipresent. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Insta. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube.
I see you all the time, and I just love your images. It's just so makes me want to go to New Zealand and visit you.
I do. I genuinely love what I do, and I want to, as a final point, I want to share that The reason that I founded Turas was because I reconnected back with what I really valued in my life when I had faced massive burnout. And that was about meaning. Money had overtaken meaning for me. And then I realized that I wanted to contribute more from who I was. And I retrained as a coach and set up Turas. And so the power of reconnecting back into who you are can be life-changing. I've never looked back. I love the life and the legacy I'm living now. And it was all because of that. So I encourage everyone to do it. It helps you make great decisions and take actions that mean you'll live life to the full.
Well, thank you again so much for being on our podcast. I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today and the beautiful points and steps and everything that you had shared with our audience. And for those of you listening, don't forget to subscribe to the People Profit Podcast for more transformative conversations. Until the next time, lead with intention, impact, and integrity. See you soon. That's a wrap on this episode of the People Profit Podcast. If you found a nugget of wisdom or even just a spark of inspiration, share the love, subscribe, leave us a review, and pass the episode along to a colleague who's ready to build a people-first culture. Big thanks to our sponsor, Human Power Solutions, for championing workplace where humans thrive and profits rise. Want to learn how they can energize your team? Head over to hpowersolutions.com to get started. I'm Sandra Coker, reminding you that when you invest in people, you invest in profit. See you next time.